On August 12, 2000, a massive steel behemoth was navigating the bottom of the Atlantic. This was the Kursk, Russia's most advanced Oscar-class nuclear attack submarine, equipped with 24 SSN-19 supersonic anti-ship missiles. These missiles were specially designed to attack aircraft carriers and their battle groups, hence the submarine is also called the carrier killer. This type of nuclear submarine rarely appears during peacetime, only being seen during exercises. On that day, the Kursk was participating in a military exercise of the Russian Northern Fleet in the Barents Sea. However, shortly after the exercise began, this 16,000-ton nuclear submarine suddenly experienced an underwater explosion. The 118 crew members sank with the submarine to a depth of over 100 meters. 2 nuclear reactors were burning in the fire, resulting in the world's most severe nuclear submarine accident to date. At the time, Russia refused many offers of joint rescue from various countries and organizations. They embarked on a 60-hour emergency rescue operation alone. Only in the final moments of the critical 72 hours did Russia agree to allow a Dutch rescue team to enter the area where the Kursk had sunk to conduct a rescue operation. So, what was the ultimate fate of these 118 crew members? What was the cause of the accident? Today, we will talk about this horrific nuclear submarine accident. During the Cold War, the military confrontations between the United States and the Soviet Union had similarities and differences, especially in naval construction. The U.S. developed a nuclear strike force centered on aircraft carriers and strategic submarines, while the Soviet Union focused on attack submarines and large surface ships as support. With the entry into service of U.S. nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, the Soviet Union felt an increasing threat and decided to build a new high-performance nuclear submarine. The purpose of this submarine was clear: to attack U.S. nuclear-powered aircraft carrier groups. This was the Oscar-class attack submarine. The submarine was designed by the famous Rubin Submarine Design Bureau of the Soviet Union, with the design code 949, hence it is also called the 949 class nuclear submarine. In 1978, the first 949 class submarine began construction at the Syeverodvinsk shipyard, a secret factory located within the Arctic Circle, specializing in the construction of nuclear submarines. Its geographic location was highly concealed, so the submarine remained confidential after construction began. NATO intelligence only knew its code name and had never seen it in practice, nor knew its details. The various capabilities of the 949 class reached the world's most advanced levels at the time. However, the designers deliberately reduced the submarine's displacement to increase speed, which resulted in high equipment density on board and made maintenance difficult, increasing the failure rate of the Oscar class. This planted the seeds for future accidents. After the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, Russia, as the largest successor, abandoned large surface ships, including aircraft carriers, but continued the construction of 949 class submarines. The Kursk was the last of the 949 class submarines, entering service in 1995 and primarily used for training by the Northern Fleet of Russia. However, due to budget constraints, even important nuclear submarines like the Kursk were neglected. In the mid-1990s, most nuclear submarines, including the Kursk, were stored in docks without adequate maintenance. These submarines rusted over the years until Russia's military budget improved in 1999 and the submarines were reactivated. The Kursk had limited training and mission experience. In 5 years of service, it performed only one official mission in May 1999, when it secretly monitored the aircraft carrier battle group of the U.S. 6th Fleet during the Kosovo War. The Kursk was equipped with 24 SSN-19 supersonic anti-ship missiles, codenamed Granite. These missiles, developed in the 1970s by the Soviet Union to attack U.S. aircraft carriers, had a maximum range of 550 kilometers and a speed of Mach 2.5, making them nearly impossible to intercept. The Granite could carry a 750 kilograms conventional warhead or a 50 kiloton nuclear warhead, capable of causing significant damage. A single Granite hitting an aircraft carrier could incapacitate its combat power. The Soviet Union equipped only 2 types of ships with these missiles, the world's largest Kirov-class nuclear-powered cruisers and the Oscar-class submarines. Moreover, the Soviet Union developed several combat tactics for the Granite, the most typical being the staggered missile launch. A guide missile flew at high altitude to attract the attention of enemy anti-ship missiles, while the others followed at low altitude. During the flight, all missiles shared a single target and could adjust their flight path. If the guide missile was intercepted, another missile would immediately take over as the guide until the attack was completed. Although this tactic was never tested in real combat, the Soviet Union never failed in its exercises. The Soviet conclusion was that within a range of 550 kilometers, staggered granite missiles would hit their targets accurately, earning the nickname a carrier killer. The granite missiles were kept in strict secrecy since their development until the sinking of the Kursk on August 13, 2000, revealing them to the world. This secrecy was one of the reasons why Russia initially refused external rescue assistance. How did this accident occur? In August 2000, the Northern Fleet of Russia, the most powerful of Russia's 4 fleets, began a 10-day naval exercise. The Northern Fleet possessed 23 strategic nuclear submarines, 35 attack nuclear submarines, Russia's only aircraft carrier, 2 nuclear-powered cruisers, and various other ships. It was a force capable of rivaling NATO in the Atlantic and Arctic. This exercise was the largest since the dissolution of the Soviet Union, involving the entire Northern Fleet to test the ships and equipment inherited from the Soviet Union. US and UK submarines also secretly entered the area to closely monitor the Northern Fleet's actions. On August 10, the Kursk, participating in the exercise as part of the Red Team, aimed to locate and destroy the Blue Team's main ship, the nuclear-powered cruiser Peter the Great. This cruiser, developed by the Soviet Union in the 1970s, is currently the only non-aircraft carrier nuclear-powered surface ship in service. With a full displacement of 25,000 tons, the Peter the Great surpasses many modern aircraft carriers and serves as the flagship of the Northern Fleet. During the exercise, the Kursk first detected the Peter the Great and fired a training granite missile, which was intercepted. Then, the Kursk maneuvered to the flank of the cruiser, intending to fire a training torpedo. The Kursk's commander, Captain Lyakin, brought the submarine to periscope depth 10 kilometers away and spotted the Peter the Great, then reported to the Red Team command and fired the torpedo. However, nothing happened when the Red Fleet awaited the impact. 1 minute later, the fleet's sensors detected an underwater explosion equivalent to 200 pounds of TNT. 2 minutes later, a second explosion 40 times larger was detected, felt even by surface ships. Simultaneously, the Kursk lost contact. The Northern Fleet went on alert and initiated a search. The Norwegian Seismic Research Institute, monitoring the exercise, recorded 2 underwater explosions at 11:28. The second was equivalent to a 2.2 magnitude earthquake. They reported this to Russia but received no response. At 23:30, 12 hours after losing contact, the Northern Fleet Command confirmed the accident and formally began the search and rescue operation. The cruiser Peter the Great began a full search with anti-submarine equipment. The Kursk did not release any distress buoys, making the search in the vast Barents Sea extremely difficult. Additionally, the Russian Navy refused all external help. Only at 4:30 the next day did the Northern Fleet locate the Kursk's sinking site. At this point, 17 hours had passed since the accident. At a depth of over 100 meters, if there were any survivors in the Kursk, they would be in a state of extreme fear. Could Russia's solo rescue operation save the Kursk? The Russian Northern Fleet found the Kursk at a depth of 108 meters 16 hours after the accident. At that time, sonar operators reported hearing possible distress signals from survivors inside the submarine, indicating that there were still crew members alive. Immediately after the accident, Norway had informed NATO, including the United States. Countries, including the United States and the United Kingdom, as well as some non-governmental organizations, offered to assist in the rescue, but Russia refused all offers. This was mainly because the Kursk was a nuclear submarine with many top-secret facilities and weapons. Russia used 3 old rescue submarines, attempting to dock with the Kursk's aft hatch and establish a watertight compartment over 3 days, but they were unsuccessful. On the 4th day, Russia finally agreed to let a Norwegian professional rescue team come to the accident site. Norwegian divers then dived to the scene. By this time, 96 hours had passed since the accident. 2 divers descended to the seabed at 108 meters and saw the sunken Kursk. The front part of the submarine had a large hole and was lying across a trench. The divers began to tap on the submarine with metal tools but received no response. The divers found a hatch and used a mechanical arm to open it, causing a large amount of gas to rush out and bubble to the surface. After inspection, they found no personnel in this compartment, indicating that those in this section had moved to another. Upon confirmation, they believed that only the aft compartment had the possibility of survivors. However, when the divers opened the aft compartment and successfully established a watertight compartment, they found many bodies inside, all of whom had been dead for some time. At this point, it was essentially confirmed that all 118 crew members were dead. Russia decided to salvage the entire submarine, but raising a 16,000-ton submarine from over 100 meters deep was very difficult. The salvage plan took a year to prepare, with Russia allocating $140 million for the operation, an amount equivalent to the annual operating budget of the entire Northern Fleet. They partnered with a Dutch rescue company for the salvage. Due to the involvement of military secrets, the submarine was cut into two halves using special steel wires by two robots. The Dutch were responsible for salvaging the rear section, while the Russians handled the front section containing the granite missiles. They used a massive barge above the accident site, lowering 26 hooks to attach steel cables to 26 large bolts pre-installed on the submarine structure. The barge's hydraulic system then lifted the submarine. The entire process had to be controlled within centimeter-level precision because any slight movement could snap the steel cables, ruining the salvage operation. This precise technique was a unique skill of the Dutch salvage company, using various shock absorbers and compensators to create a stable environment on the Arctic Ocean surface, similar to a calm lake, all controlled by computers. This was why Russia ultimately sought to cooperate with this Dutch company. All the salvage equipment was custom-made for this operation, with months of simulated training conducted on land. Finally, 12 divers had to weld the 26 large bolts onto the submarine. They descended to the seabed in small submarines and saw the Kursk a year after the accident. This task was challenging for the divers. They had to be cautious because it was a nuclear submarine that had suffered an accident. They did not know if the nuclear reactor had leaked and had to enter the submarine's interior to weld the bolts, potentially encountering gruesome scenes of crew members' bodies soaked for a year. Therefore, they faced tremendous psychological pressure during their work. The rescue team provided psychological counselors for the divers. After 28 days of work, the divers successfully welded the bolts. After lifting the submarine, the barge moved into a specially made dock where the submarine was lowered. The dock then raised and drained, revealing the Kursk gradually. The submarine's emblem became visible, showing that all the portholes were broken. When the dry dock was reached, people saw the Kursk's front section twisted and damaged for the first time, indicating the accident's location, while the rear section remained relatively intact. So, how did this accident happen? To this day, Russia has not issued an official report on the Kursk incident, leaving the cause to be speculated based on circumstances. The cause was undoubtedly related to the two underwater explosions. During the exercise, the Kursk fired a practice torpedo at the Peter the Great. This was the first torpedo launch since the Kursk was reactivated. The 4.5-ton training torpedo used hydrogen peroxide and kerosene liquid fuel and was not armed with a live warhead. Manufactured before 1990, this batch of torpedoes was required to be reworked due to quality issues. However, due to the political turmoil in the Soviet Union and reduced funding for the Northern Fleet, these defective torpedoes were repurposed as training torpedoes and distributed to the submarine units. The torpedo fired by the Kursk was one of them. It is believed that the first explosion was caused by this torpedo, which had been loaded in the submarine for a long time without maintenance. Hydrogen peroxide fuel leaked in the torpedo tube, and as the crew tried to figure out why it failed to launch, the torpedo in the tube suddenly exploded. For a training torpedo without a warhead, this kind of explosion would be bearable for the submarine. However, the resulting fire instantly raised the temperature in the torpedo compartment to 2,000 degrees Celsius. The torpedo compartment housed 32 torpedoes, 28 of which were live. This caused a massive explosion in the torpedo compartment, with a combined explosive yield equivalent to 5 tons of TNT, blowing a large hole in the front of the Kursk. This was the 2.2 magnitude underwater earthquake detected by the Norwegian Seismic Research Institute. The personnel in the torpedo compartment likely died instantly. Since the Kursk had multiple compartments, each could be sealed off. When the shockwave from the torpedo compartment reached the third compartment, the control room, it is speculated that those inside, including the captain, were severely impacted and possibly lost consciousness instantly, unable to send a distress signal. The submarine's rear section remained intact, making an emergency ascent possible, but the control room's lack of response indicated that the crew inside quickly lost consciousness. The shockwave was stopped by the fifth compartment, the reactor compartment, 70 meters from the explosion point. This was the most reinforced section of the submarine. When the submarine was salvaged, it was found that several officers inside were wearing oxygen masks, indicating they survived the initial explosion and remained at their posts. Records showed that the only engineer on duty in the reactor room, Alexei, called the control room after the first explosion but received no response. Shortly after, the second explosion occurred. Alexei immediately shut down the reactor, lowered the protective shield, and locked himself inside the reactor compartment, ensuring there was no nuclear leakage. In the last compartment, researchers found 23 men. These survivors, led by junior officer Dmitry, had gathered here and likely survived for over 12 hours, attempting various ways to signal those on the surface. This corresponds with the fleet's sonar operator reporting hearing possible distress signals from within the submarine. These 23 were the last survivors of the 118 crew members. Their challenge was the lack of oxygen. Typically, a nuclear submarine can conduct long-term underwater missions, staying submerged for 2 to 3 months without resupply, thanks to its compressed oxygen tanks and oxygen regeneration system. However, these systems require power. At the time, the Kursk's power system was likely down, rendering the oxygen regeneration system inoperative, leading to a gradual depletion of oxygen. An emergency measure was the oxygen regeneration plates, chemical plates that convert exhaled carbon dioxide into oxygen without power, meant for emergencies. When the Kursk exploded, the crew began moving to the rear compartments. The last 23 men carried oxygen regeneration plates but found a large bundle of plates outside the last watertight compartment, suggesting they were dropped in the darkness during the retreat. Without sufficient oxygen regeneration plates, these 23 men could not survive until rescue arrived. Researchers estimated they could have survived up to 15 hours, but divers began descending on the fourth day of the accident, by which time they had likely already died from lack of oxygen. After the accident, Russia held memorial services for the 118 crew members and compensated their families. Every year on August 12, the Russian Navy holds a memorial at the Kursk Monument. Following the accident, all torpedoes using hydrogen peroxide and kerosene fuel were retired, and the Northern Fleet's budget was significantly increased to maintain the nuclear submarines inherited from the Soviet era. Just before the Kursk was salvaged, 2 divers placed a wreath and a memorial plaque at the accident site, honoring the brave submarine crew. This concludes our video. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Peace.